The human ship Horizon's Edge moved slowly through space toward the massive alien station. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the alien structure grow larger on their screens. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth, spinning slowly around the bright orange sun of the Kalari homeworld. Jake felt nervous but tried not to show it. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Kalari Confederation, a group of 12 different alien species that ruled this part of the galaxy. The Kalari had been in space for thousands of years while humans had only been traveling between stars for a few decades. Dr. Lisa Parker walked up to stand beside Jake. She was the ship's head science officer, and one of the few people who knew the real truth about this mission. "The disguise systems are working perfectly," she said quietly. "Their scanners show us exactly what we want them to see." Jake nodded. The Kalari thought they were looking at a primitive human ship with basic fusion engines and simple energy shields. They had no idea that the Horizon's Edge could bend space and time, or that its real weapons could destroy entire planets. Everything the Kalari saw was a lie, a careful fake designed to make humans look weak and harmless. The plan had taken years to develop. Earth's leaders had been listening to Kalari radio signals for decades using secret listening posts hidden in deep space. They learned that the Kalari liked to find new species and pretend to help them while actually taking over their worlds. The Kalari thought they were the smartest and strongest beings in the galaxy, but humans had technology the Kalari couldn't even imagine. They had machines that could change matter into anything they wanted, computers that could move human minds from one body to another, and ships that could travel through time. If the Kalari knew the truth, they would attack Earth immediately with everything they had. So Earth's government decided to trick them. Humans would act like they were just another young species that needed help and guidance. They would let the Kalari feel superior while human spies learned everything about their enemies. It was a dangerous game, but the only way to protect Earth. Engineer Pete Collins was busy in the engine room making sure their fake systems looked real to alien scanners. He had spent months modifying the ship's computers to hide their true power. When the Kalari looked at their engines, they would see crude fusion reactors instead of the reality-bending drives that actually moved the ship. Communications officer Amy Rodriguez sat at her station preparing the translation programs. She had programmed the computers to make human language sound simple and primitive to alien ears. Every word she spoke would be changed to make humans seem less intelligent than they really were. The Kalari had made first contact with Earth 6 months ago. Their ships had appeared in Earth's solar system and sent messages saying they wanted to be friends. They acted like they were doing humans a great favor by talking to them. The alien messages were full of words about helping and teaching the young human race. Earth's leaders had smiled and acted grateful while secretly preparing for war. They knew from intercepted alien communications that the Kalari had destroyed dozens of other species. The aliens would study human technology, pretend to be teachers, and then slowly take control of Earth's government. But the Kalari were about to make the biggest mistake in their long history. They were trying to trick a species that had already learned all their secrets. The alien station grew larger as they approached. Jake could see ships of many different designs docked around its edges. Some looked like the smooth metal vessels favored by the Kalari themselves. Others were more exotic, with strange curves and glowing parts that showed they came from the other species in the Confederation. "Incoming message from the station," Amy reported. She touched her controls, and an alien voice filled the bridge. "Human, Vessel Horizon's Edge, this is Kalari Station Control. You are cleared to dock at Bay 7. Ambassador Thecamore is waiting to greet you." "Thank you, Control," Jake replied. "We are honored by your welcome." The words felt strange in his mouth. Humans weren't honored at all. They were here to spy on murderers and slavers, but the act had to be perfect. Dr. Parker checked her equipment one more time. Hidden in her medical kit were scanning devices that could analyze alien technology from across a room. The Kalari would think she was just a curious scientist while she was actually stealing their secrets. The ship's artificial gravity shifted slightly as they entered the docking bay. Through the windows, Jake could see Kalari workers moving around the bay. They looked like tall, thin humans, but with gray skin and large black eyes. Their movements were quick and precise, showing the confidence of a species that had never been seriously challenged. Remember, everyone, Jake said quietly to his crew. We are just simple humans who are amazed by everything we see. Ask lots of questions. Act confused by their technology and always seem grateful for their help. The crew nodded. They had practiced this act for months, but now it was real. One mistake could mean war between Earth and an enemy that controlled hundreds of worlds. The docking tube connected with a soft thump. Jake straightened his uniform and walked toward the airlock. Behind him, his crew followed, each carrying hidden devices that would help them spy on their hosts. The airlock opened to reveal 3 Kalari waiting for them. The leader was taller than the others, with silver marks on his gray skin that showed his high rank. This had to be Ambassador Thekmore. Welcome to Kalari space, the ambassador said. His voice was translated by their computers, but Jake could hear the patronizing tone underneath. I am Ambassador Thekmore. We are pleased to finally meet our new human friends. Jake stepped forward and offered a human handshake. The alien looked confused for a moment before awkwardly taking Jake's hand. I am Commander Jake Morrison, Jake said. Thank you for inviting us here. We have so much to learn from your great civilization. Thekmore's large eyes seemed to glow with satisfaction. Indeed you do, he said. Come, let me show you wonders beyond your current understanding. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake marveled at how easy it was to fool the aliens. They were so sure of their own superiority that they couldn't imagine any species being more advanced than them. The real game was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the first meeting, and the deception was working perfectly. Captain Ryan Torres sat in a classroom at the Kalari Military Academy, listening to alien instructors explain battle tactics that humans had surpassed decades ago. Around him, other alien students from various species took careful notes, genuinely impressed by what they were learning. Ryan nodded and wrote in his notebook like an eager student, while inside his head, he was horrified by what he heard. The Kalari didn't just conquer other worlds, they enjoyed it. The instructor was explaining how to break the spirit of a population by destroying their cultural sites first, then their food production, and finally their communication networks. The key is to make them feel helpless, the Kalari instructor said with what sounded like pleasure in his voice. Once they understand that resistance is impossible, they become much more cooperative workers. Workers, not citizens. The aliens didn't even pretend that conquered peoples had any rights. Ryan kept his face neutral while making mental notes of everything he heard. This information would help Earth's military plan their response when the time came. Dr. Sandra Mills was having similar experiences in the Kalari biotech laboratories. She stood next to an alien scientist who was showing off their advanced genetic modification equipment. The machine could alter DNA in simple ways, something human scientists had been doing for over a century. This is amazing, Sandra said with fake wonder in her voice. We have nothing like this on Earth. The Kalari scientist, whose name was Vectar, seemed very pleased. Your species shows promise, he said. Perhaps in a few hundred years you might develop something similar. Sandra wanted to laugh. Hidden in her pocket was a device no bigger than her thumb that could rewrite the genetic code of any living thing in seconds. But she had to act impressed by technology that humans considered primitive. What disturbed her more was what she saw in the other part of the lab. The Kalari were experimenting on living beings from conquered worlds. They cut open intelligent creatures while they were still alive, trying to understand how different species worked. The screams echoed through the facility, but the Kalari scientists acted like they were just working with interesting equipment. Sandra had to bite her tongue to keep from saying anything. These weren't experiments, they were torture sessions disguised as science. But if she revealed her true feelings, the whole mission would be compromised. Back on Earth, Admiral Greg Stone coordinated the secret parts of the mission from his hidden command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Dozens of screens showed him information from human spies scattered across Kalari space. What he saw made him angry enough to want to attack immediately. The Kalari had destroyed 43 different species in the past 1,000 years. They kept detailed records of each conquest, describing the process like it was just another business transaction. Entire civilizations were reduced to numbers in their databases. So many workers, so many useful resources, So many potential test subjects for their experiments. But Earth wasn't ready for open war yet. The human fleet was powerful enough to destroy the Kalari, but first they needed to know everything about their enemy's capabilities. Information was more valuable than weapons right now. Lieutenant Carl Johnson was getting that information from inside a Kalari warship called the Star Render. He worked as a guest observer in their communications department, supposedly learning how their advanced systems worked. In reality, he was copying every piece of data that passed through their networks. The Kalari crew treated him like a pet that had learned an amusing trick. They would explain basic concepts very slowly, as if talking to a child, while he secretly recorded their military codes and tactical plans. Sometimes it took all his willpower not to show them what real human technology could do. But today was different. Today he watched something that made his blood turn cold. The Star Render was part of a fleet heading toward a planet called Nexar Prime. The inhabitants had refused to surrender their world to the Kalari, so now they were going to be punished. Carl watched the tactical displays as the alien fleet prepared to bombard cities full of innocent people. "This will be a good lesson for other stubborn worlds," said the ship's captain, a Kalari named Zexmore. "Sometimes you must destroy completely to achieve peace." Carl stood in the communications center and watched as energy beams fell from space like deadly rain. Each flash on the screen represented thousands of deaths. Cities that had stood for centuries were wiped away in seconds. The Kalari officers around him cheered as their weapons found their targets. He wanted to scream. He wanted to grab the nearest weapon and fight back. But he couldn't. If he revealed himself now, Earth would lose its advantage and billions more people would die when the Kalari eventually attacked his homeworld. So Carl just stood there and watched genocide happen while pretending to be impressed by alien military efficiency. That night in his quarters, he sent a coded message back to Earth, but the words felt empty. How could he describe the horror of watching an entire civilization die while being unable to help? Dr. Lisa Parker was having her own struggles on the main Kalari research station. She worked alongside alien scientists who thought they were teaching her about energy manipulation. They showed her devices that could generate power levels that seemed impressive until she compared them to what humans could achieve. The hardest part wasn't pretending to be amazed by inferior technology. It was listening to the Kalari scientists talk about their plans for Earth. They discussed human biology like they were planning to dissect every person on the planet. They wanted to understand what made humans different from other species they had encountered. Humans seem more creative than most young species, one researcher told her. It will be interesting to study their brain structure once we have proper specimens. Lisa nodded and smiled while inside she felt sick. They were talking about experimenting on her friends and family, like they were laboratory animals. But she had to keep acting grateful for their friendship and guidance. The psychological pressure was getting to all the human agents. They met in secret when they could, using hidden communication devices to share information and support each other. But each day brought new horrors as they learned more about Kalari methods. Engineer Pete Collins discovered that the aliens had a special kind of weapon designed to cause maximum suffering. It didn't kill quickly. Instead, it slowly dissolved living tissue while keeping the victim conscious. The Kalari used these weapons to punish worlds that resisted too strongly. Communications officer Amy Rodriguez learned about the Cultural Destruction Protocol, a systematic method for wiping out the history and identity of conquered peoples. They would destroy all art, music, and literature, then force survivors to adopt Kalari customs. Within a few generations, the original species would be completely forgotten. But the most disturbing discovery came from Captain Torres at the military academy. He learned about something called the Final Solution Program, the Kalari's plan for dealing with species that couldn't be controlled or converted into useful workers. These species were simply eliminated completely, their worlds turned into lifeless rocks. Earth was on that list. The Kalari had already decided that humans were too independent and creative to make good slaves. Once they learned everything useful from human technology, they planned to sterilize Earth and use it as a military base. Every man, woman, and child on the planet would die. Torres sent this information back to Earth in a priority message, knowing it would change everything. The time for passive observation was ending. Humanity would have to act soon or face complete extinction, but they had gained something valuable from their months of deception. They knew exactly how the Kalari military worked, where their bases were located and what their weaknesses might be. The aliens had taught their enemies everything they needed to know to destroy them. The greatest trick was almost ready to be revealed. The emergency meeting took place in the deepest part of Admiral Stone's command center. The holographic displays around the room showed maps of Kalari space, fleet positions, and intelligence reports from human agents across dozens of star systems. But everyone's attention was focused on the data that Dr. Janet Blake had just transmitted from her position inside Kalari Command. Janet worked as a primitive communications technician in the heart of the alien military structure. For months, she had maintained her cover while copying their most secret files. What she discovered made even the hardest military officers feel sick. The Kalari weren't just planning to invade Earth. They had already begun. Hidden ships were moving toward human space, carrying advanced teams that would establish secret bases on the outer planets. Within 5 years, these bases would have enough firepower to destroy Earth's defenses before the planet even knew it was under attack. The timeline is called Operation Gentle Guidance, Janet's report explained. They plan to gradually increase their presence in our system, while offering to help protect us from imaginary threats. Each year, they'll introduce more of their technology and cultural systems. By year 5, Earth will be completely dependent on them for everything. Admiral Stone studied the invasion plans with growing anger. The Kalari had done this same thing to dozens of other worlds. They would arrive as friends, slowly take control of key systems, and then reveal their true intentions when it was too late for anyone to resist. But there was something even worse in Janet's intelligence. The Kalari had learned from their previous conquests that some species would never accept slavery. These problem species were dealt with through something called the Cleansing Protocol, a systematic program of genocide that would eliminate every human being in the galaxy. They've already identified Earth as a cleansing target, Stone told his staff. The cultural exchange program is just a way to study us before they begin the extermination process. The room fell silent. Everyone knew this day might come, but seeing the actual plans made it real in a way that chilled them all. Captain Torres was still embedded with the Kalari military when he received new orders from Earth. Instead of just gathering information, he was now authorized to take direct action when necessary. The change in mission parameters came just in time. Torres watched in horror as the Kalari prepared their most massive military operation in centuries. 3 entire star systems had rebelled against Kalari rule, declaring independence and forming their own alliance. The aliens' response was typically brutal. They were going to kill every living thing in all 3 systems as an example to other potential rebels. The cleansing protocol would be tested on 27 worlds containing billions of innocent people. Torres read the operational orders and felt his hands shake with rage. The Kalari planned to use biological weapons that would kill slowly and painfully, making sure other worlds would see the consequences of resistance. He couldn't watch this happen, not when he had the power to stop it. Torres waited until the Kalari fleet was in deep space, traveling toward their first target system. Then he activated a device hidden in his personal belongings, a quantum disruptor that could interfere with any computer system within several light years. The device was no bigger than a coin, but it contained technology that was centuries beyond anything the Kalari understood. The effect was immediate. Navigation computers across the entire Kalari fleet began displaying random numbers. Star charts became meaningless collections of dots. Communication systems started sending ships in different directions. Within hours, the mighty Kalari armada was scattered across dozens of star systems, completely lost and unable to find each other. Torres reported the incident as a mysterious system malfunction, acting confused and concerned along with the rest of the crew. The Kalari officers were baffled. Their technology had never failed so completely before. Some suspected sabotage, but their scanners could find no evidence of tampering. The delay gave the rebel worlds time to prepare better defenses and evacuate their most vulnerable populations. More importantly, It proved to Earth's leadership that direct intervention was possible without revealing the full extent of human capabilities. Back on the Kalari research station, Dr. Lisa Parker received her own authorization for active measures. She had been watching alien scientists plan experiments on human subjects, using volunteers from Earth who thought they were participating in harmless cultural exchange programs. The Kalari wanted to understand human psychology by subjecting test subjects to various forms of stress and trauma. They had detailed plans for breaking down human mental defenses, studying how people reacted to torture, and determining the most efficient ways to control human behavior. Lisa couldn't let this happen to her fellow humans. She began sabotaging the experiments from within, using her knowledge of human biology to create false results. When the aliens tested human pain tolerance, her hidden devices made the subjects appear much more fragile than they really were. When they studied human problem-solving abilities, she made sure the results showed humans as being far less intelligent than the truth. The false data would eventually make the Kalari underestimate human capabilities even more than they already did. But more immediately, it protected the human volunteers from the worst of the alien experiments. Dr. Sandra Mills faced the most direct horror in the biological research facility. She watched Kalari scientists torture intelligent beings from conquered worlds, cutting them open while they were still conscious and aware. The aliens claimed this was necessary for scientific advancement, but Sandra could see they enjoyed the suffering they caused. When she learned that human subjects were scheduled to arrive next week for advanced biological studies, she knew she had to act. Using equipment hidden in her medical kit, she contaminated the facility's entire biological containment system. Deadly viruses that only affected Kalari physiology began spreading through the laboratory's air systems. The outbreak forced the facility to shut down for months, while they tried to understand what had gone wrong. The human test subjects were delayed indefinitely, while the aliens dealt with their own emergency. Sandra maintained her cover by helping treat infected Kalari workers, all while knowing she was the one who had poisoned them. Lieutenant Carl Johnson faced his own moral crisis aboard the Kalari warship Star Render. The ship had been reassigned to pacification duty in a system where colonial worlds were refusing to meet their tribute quotas. Johnson watched as the crew prepared to bombard civilian targets as punishment for their government's defiance. This time, Johnson didn't wait for authorization from Earth. As the ship approached the first target world, he activated a hidden device that overloaded the ship's main weapon systems. The energy discharge was so powerful that it fused critical components into useless metal slag. The Star Render was forced to return to base for extensive repairs, unable to participate in the planned bombardment. Johnson reported the incident as a catastrophic equipment failure, suggesting that the ship's weapons had been pushed beyond their design limits during recent battles. But the psychological effect on the Kalari crew was more important than the tactical victory. For the first time in their military careers, they had experienced technology that simply stopped working when they needed it most. Seeds of doubt about their technological superiority were beginning to grow. Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez made her own contribution to the growing campaign of subtle sabotage. She had access to the main Kalari communication networks and began introducing small errors into their military coordination systems. Orders became garbled, supply requests were sent to the wrong destinations, and tactical updates contained misleading information. The chaos was barely noticeable at first, but it accumulated over time. Kalari military efficiency began to decline as their logistics systems became increasingly unreliable. Field commanders started doubting the accuracy of their intelligence reports, and coordination between different alien species in the Confederation became more difficult. On Earth, President Helen Carter authorized the transition to Phase 2 of humanity's response to the Kalari threat. The time for pure deception was ending. Now humans would begin demonstrating carefully controlled examples of their real capabilities, while maintaining the illusion that these were recent breakthrough discoveries inspired by studying Kalari technology. The goal was to make the aliens reconsider their invasion timeline without revealing the full extent of human advancement. If the Kalari believed that humans were advancing too quickly to be safely conquered, they might delay their attack long enough for Earth to prepare a complete military response. But the deeper goal was psychological warfare. The Kalari had built their entire civilization on the belief that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. Discovering that a primitive species could match or exceed their technology would shake the foundation of their society. Admiral Stone looked at the intelligence reports from all of humanity's embedded agents and felt something like satisfaction for the first time in months. The Kalari were beginning to experience doubt, confusion, and technical failures. Their perfect military machine was developing cracks that would soon become major flaws. The transformation began in the most subtle way possible. Dr. Lisa Parker stood before a gathering of Kalari scientists in their main research facility, presenting what she called humanity's latest breakthrough in energy manipulation. Behind her, a holographic display showed equations that made several alien researchers gasp in surprise. "We studied the principles you shared with us," Lisa explained with carefully practiced excitement. "Human intuition led us to try some unusual approaches, and we achieved this result." She activated a small device on the table. Energy flowed through it in patterns that defied what the Kalari understood about physics. The device produced more power than its size should have allowed, using principles that even advanced Kalari science couldn't fully explain. Ambassador Thekmore watched from the back of the room with growing confusion. The humans had been on their station for only 6 months, yet somehow they were demonstrating technology that seemed to leap decades ahead of their previous capabilities. But the explanation made sense. Humans were clearly fast learners who benefited greatly from Kalari guidance. The ambassador felt pleased with himself. Clearly, the Kalari were such excellent teachers that even primitive species could make rapid advances under their instruction. Engineer Pete Collins made the next demonstration 3 days later. He showed Kalari engineers a new propulsion system that human scientists had supposedly developed after studying alien ship designs. The engine was smaller and more efficient than anything in the Kalari fleet, but Collins explained it as a lucky discovery made while trying to copy their superior technology. "We were attempting to recreate your fusion drive systems," Collins said with humble enthusiasm. "Human thinking patterns are somewhat chaotic, and we accidentally discovered this variation. We hope it might be useful to your people as well." Kalari engineers examined the human engine with growing amazement. Not only did it match their best propulsion technology, it actually exceeded it in several key areas. The fuel consumption was lower, the energy output was higher, and the design was elegantly simple in ways that their own systems weren't. But Collins had presented it as an accident, a fortunate mistake made by primitive humans who were trying to copy superior alien technology. The explanation allowed the Kalari to maintain their sense of superiority while being forced to acknowledge that humans were advancing much faster than expected. Captain Torres made his own contribution during a joint military exercise between human and Kalari forces. His ship, the Aurora Dawn, demonstrated defensive capabilities that completely nullified Kalari weapons. Energy beams that should have penetrated human shields were absorbed harmlessly. Missiles that should have destroyed the human vessel simply vanished when they made contact with the ship's defensive grid. When questioned by amazed Kalari officers, Torres offered a technical explanation about resonance frequencies and harmonic cancellation. He claimed that human scientists had discovered these principles while studying captured fragments of Kalari weapons, leading to the development of defensive systems specifically tuned to counter alien technology. "It's probably just luck," Torres said modestly. "Our defenses work well against your weapons, but they might be completely useless against different types of attacks." The Kalari military observers didn't know how to respond. They had just watched their most powerful weapons rendered completely ineffective by ships they had considered primitive. The humans offered reasonable explanations for their success, but the demonstrations were deeply unsettling. For the first time in their military careers, Kalari officers were confronting the possibility that their technological superiority might not be absolute. The feeling was profoundly disturbing for a species that had built their entire civilization on the belief that they were the most advanced beings in the galaxy. Dr. Sandra Mills created the most dramatic demonstration in the biological research facility. When a Kalari experiment went wrong and threatened to kill one of their own scientists, She intervened with medical technology that completely regenerated the victim's damaged organs in a matter of minutes. The alien researchers watched in stunned silence as human medical devices performed miracles that exceeded their own capabilities by orders of magnitude. Organs that had been destroyed by toxic chemicals were rebuilt from nothing. Cellular damage that should have been permanent was reversed completely. The dying scientist was not just saved, but restored to perfect health. We developed this technique by studying your biological research methods, Mills explained to the speechless aliens. Human medical thinking tends to focus on regeneration rather than replacement. We combined your cellular manipulation principles with our own intuitive approaches to healing. The explanation was technically plausible, but it didn't address the fundamental question of how humans had achieved such advanced capabilities so quickly. The Kalari had been working on regenerative medicine for centuries without achieving anything close to what they had just witnessed. Ambassador Thekmore requested a private meeting with Commander Morrison to discuss these remarkable human advances. The two leaders met in Thekmore's personal quarters, surrounded by displays showing the technological achievements of Kalari civilization over thousands of years. Your species learns very quickly, the ambassador said carefully. These advances you have made in such a short time are impressive. Morrison maintained his role perfectly, showing appropriate humility, while carefully revealing just enough truth to plant seeds of doubt in the alien's mind. We have always been curious about how things work, he said. Sometimes our unconventional thinking leads to unexpected discoveries. We are grateful that your people have been patient with our unusual approaches. Thekmore studied the human commander with growing unease. There was something about Morrison's manner that suggested depths the ambassador hadn't previously suspected. The human seemed confident in ways that didn't match his species' supposedly primitive status. These discoveries of yours, Thekmore continued, they seem to go beyond what should be possible with the knowledge we have shared. How do you explain such rapid advancement? Morrison smiled in a way that made the ambassador feel suddenly uncomfortable. Perhaps human minds work differently than you expected, he said. We have always believed that any problem can be solved if you think about it in the right way. The conversation left Thekmore deeply troubled. For months, he had thought of humans as an amusing, primitive species that could be guided and eventually controlled. But the evidence was mounting that these primitives might actually be more capable than anyone had realized. The first major crack in Kalari confidence came when Dr. Parker demonstrated what she called a breakthrough in matter conversion. She showed alien scientists a device that could transform any substance into any other substance at the molecular level. The machine converted a piece of metal into organic material, then changed that into energy, then reformed the energy back into a completely different type of metal. The Kalari scientists watching the demonstration fell silent. They had theoretical knowledge about matter conversion, but actually building a working device had always been beyond their capabilities. Humans had apparently achieved in months what Kalari science hadn't accomplished in millennia. We were inspired by your research into atomic manipulation, Parker explained. Human creativity led us to try some approaches that your people probably wouldn't consider. We're still learning how it works ourselves. The casual way she dismissed such an incredible achievement made the aliens feel even more unsettled. If humans could develop reality-altering technology almost by accident, what else might they be capable of? Lieutenant Johnson contributed to the growing psychological pressure by demonstrating communication systems that operated faster than anything in the Kalari fleet. His ship could send messages across interstellar distances instantly, while Kalari communications required hours or days to reach their destinations. When alien engineers asked how this was possible, Johnson offered explanations about quantum entanglement and dimensional resonance that sounded plausible, but described technology far beyond what humans should have been able to create. The cumulative effect on Kalari confidence was devastating. Every demonstration showed humans achieving things that should have been impossible for their level of development. The explanations were always humble and reasonable, but they didn't change the fundamental reality that a supposedly primitive species was matching or exceeding Kalari capabilities in multiple areas. Some Kalari began to suspect that humans might not be as primitive as they appeared. But accepting this possibility required abandoning everything they believed about their own superiority, and most were not ready to face such a fundamental challenge to their worldview. The Confederation started to fracture as different species. Within their alliance reacted differently to the human demonstrations. Some wanted to study human methods more carefully to understand their rapid advancement. Others insisted that the demonstrations must be tricks or deceptions. Still others began to wonder if they had chosen the wrong side in galactic politics. Commander Morrison watched the growing confusion among his hosts and knew that Phase 2 of the operation was succeeding beyond expectations. The final revelation began with desperation. The Kalari leadership, growing increasingly uncomfortable with human technological advances, decided they needed to see what humans were really capable of. If these primitives had somehow developed advanced technology, then that technology needed to be captured and studied before it became a threat. Ambassador Techmore authorized what he called a research expedition to the human station at the edge of Kalari space. In reality, it was a military strike designed to overwhelm human defenses and capture their advanced equipment. The Kalari expected to crush primitive shields and weapons, then collect the wreckage for detailed analysis. 27 Kalari warships approached the human research station New Horizon. The station appeared to be a simple construction of metal plates and basic energy collectors, exactly what anyone would expect from a species that had barely mastered interstellar travel. Even the defensive systems looked crude and outdated compared to Kalari military technology. Admiral Stone watched the approaching fleet from his command center on Earth, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and regret. Satisfaction, because the aliens had finally revealed their true intentions, and regret, because the deception was about to end. Humanity would never again have the advantage of being underestimated. All ships dropped the disguise protocols, Stone ordered. Let them see what we really are. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The simple research station flickered like a bad hologram and was replaced by something that defied every assumption the Kalari had made about human technology. The real New Horizon was not built from metal plates, but grown from living crystal that pulsed with internal energy. Its defensive systems weren't crude energy shields, but reality distortion fields that bent space and time around the station. The human ships defending the station underwent their own transformation. What had appeared to be primitive vessels with fusion drives and basic weapons revealed themselves as sleek predators that moved through space like living creatures. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, and energy danced around them in patterns that seemed almost artistic. Captain Torres, now commanding the human destroyer Starfire, felt a profound relief as his ship's true form was finally revealed. For months he had pretended to struggle with inferior technology, while his vessel's real systems remained hidden. Now the Starfire could show what human engineering was actually capable of. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Kalari opened fire with weapons that should have destroyed any human ship in seconds, but their energy beams simply vanished. When they touched the reality distortion field surrounding the human vessels, missiles that should have caused devastating explosions were absorbed into pocket dimensions and disappeared from normal space-time. The human response was swift and overwhelming. Instead of crude projectile weapons, they used devices that manipulated matter at the quantum level. Kalari ships found their hulls transforming into harmless gas. Their weapons became inert metal sculptures. Their engines turned into decorative crystals that sparkled prettily but produced no thrust. Not a single Kalari was killed, but their entire fleet was rendered completely helpless in a matter of minutes. Every ship was captured intact, their crews unharmed but deeply shaken by their encounter with technology they couldn't begin to understand. Admiral Stone arrived at the battle site aboard the human dreadnought New Frontier, a ship whose true appearance had been hidden throughout the entire diplomatic process. The vessel was enormous, larger than the biggest Kalari battleship, but it moved through space with the grace of a dancer. Its hull was not made of any material the aliens recognized, and energy flowed across its surface in patterns that were both beautiful and intimidating. Stone addressed the captured Kalari commanders through their own communication systems. His Words transmitted simultaneously across every channel in their network. What he told them changed the galaxy forever. "I am Admiral Stone of the Human Space Command," he began. "You know me as the leader of a primitive species seeking guidance from our betters. That was a lie. Everything you thought you knew about humanity was carefully crafted deception, designed to protect innocent civilizations from your predatory expansion." The aliens listening to his words felt their understanding of reality crumble around them. The species they had patronized and looked down upon was revealing itself to be something far beyond their comprehension. "We have been aware of your existence for over 50 years, Stone continued. "Our monitoring stations have recorded every signal you transmitted, every military movement you made, every atrocity you committed against developing worlds. We watched you destroy civilizations and enslave populations while you believed yourselves to be alone in your superiority." Dr. Lisa Parker, now revealed as the commander of humanity's Advanced Research Division, began broadcasting evidence that human operatives had gathered during their months of infiltration. The data was overwhelming and irrefutable. Detailed records of Kalari war crimes, documentation of their systematic oppression of other species, and proof of their planned genocide against humanity itself. The psychological impact on Kalari society was immediate and devastating. Their entire civilization had been built on the foundation that they were the most advanced species in this region of space. Learning that they had been observed and judged by beings so far ahead of them that the technological gap couldn't even be measured destroyed the basis of their cultural identity. But Stone wasn't finished. "Your technology, which you believed to be superior, is centuries behind human science. Your fastest ships move at speeds we achieved decades ago. Your most powerful weapons could not penetrate defenses we consider basic. Your greatest scientific achievements are elementary exercises that human children learn in school." Captain Torres, broadcasting from the Starfire, provided specific examples. "Your fusion drives are based on principles we abandoned 40 years ago. Our ships use controlled manipulation of space-time geometry. Your energy weapons operate by heating matter to high temperatures. Ours rearrange atomic structure at the quantum level. Your shields deflect incoming attacks. Ours alter local reality to make attacks impossible." The demonstrations that followed were designed not to destroy but to educate. Human ships showed the captured aliens what their technology could really do when it wasn't hidden behind false limitations. They opened doorways between distant points in space, created matter from pure energy, and manipulated time itself to send messages into the past. Dr. Sandra Mills revealed that human medicine could not only heal any injury but actually reverse aging and transfer consciousness between bodies. The biological experiments that had so horrified her during her infiltration were primitive compared to what human science had achieved in understanding life itself. Engineer Pete Collins showed them manufacturing systems that could build entire planets from raw stellar material, energy collectors that could drain the power of stars, and construction methods that worked by convincing matter to arrange itself into desired patterns. But the most devastating revelation came from communications. Officer Amy Rodriguez, who had been monitoring Kalari networks throughout their entire deception. She presented complete records of every conversation, every plan, and every secret the aliens thought they had kept hidden. "We heard everything," she announced. "Every species you destroyed, every world you poisoned, every population you enslaved. We recorded your crimes not as accusations but as evidence for the judgment we knew would eventually come." Ambassador Techmore, aboard one of the captured ships, finally understood the magnitude of what had happened. His species had attempted to trick and conquer beings so advanced that the Kalari were like insects by comparison. Worse, these beings had moral standards that made them superior in ways beyond mere technology. "Why didn't you destroy us immediately?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Stone's answer revealed the fundamental difference between human and Kalari civilization. "Because destruction is not justice. We chose to understand you completely before deciding your fate. Now that we have observed your methods and documented your crimes, we offer you a choice." The choice was simple but profound. The Kalari could surrender their aggressive expansion and join a new galactic alliance based on cooperation, rather than domination. They would have to make reparations to the species they had oppressed and submit to oversight by a council that included representatives from their former victims. Or they could face the consequences of continuing their predatory behavior against civilizations that now had humanity as their protector. Most Kalari chose cooperation, grateful for the opportunity, to avoid the fate they had planned for so many others. Some tried to resist, but their rebellion was ended quickly and decisively, by technology they couldn't fight or even comprehend. The galactic balance of power shifted overnight. Species that had lived in fear of Kalari conquest suddenly found themselves protected by allies whose capabilities seemed almost godlike. Worlds that had been stripped of resources were restored to their original conditions. Populations that had been enslaved were freed and given the tools to rebuild their civilizations.